Recording is in progress. Here we
Indeed, it
are,
is.
the Border Pole Journal. A little bit late this week, but
I should point out, by the way, that somebody complained to me that we weren't on Saturday or Friday. Ah, mind you, it's a friend of mine
I'll
who
uh,
watches our stuff or listens to it here in
I'll take responsibility for that because I got broad shoulders.
that's okay. I just thought it was a nice touch. How come you guys weren't on? Well,
Well, we were a
things
little off. We were
things
just a little.
things happen. We
Well,
we
for myself, I was still kind of reeling, I guess is the word, over the political events of last week. Still haven't really resolved it in my own mind yet what the implications are, where things are going to end up. But I guess what surprised me the most about that uh, political shooting was that I would venture to say 75 to 80% of the people probably didn't even know who Charlie Kirk was.
well, certainly in
Yeah,
Canada.
yeah, well, certainly in Canada, and probably even in the United States, I think there was a large percent of the population that don't follow that kind of stuff. And I guess the first thing people do when they don't know something is they jump on their social media platforms, which are already loaded with the algorithms that they've been using over the last number of years, be that leaning to the right, be that leaning to the left. And that's all that they can garner from their research. I don't think a lot of people look beyond that. They don't look, well, if it's leaning very towards the right, where this guy is a martyr, or to the left, where the guy was the devil incarnate. That's all they know, and they start spouting off vile comments that I don't know. My opinion, I don't think they even would have called Adolf Hitler some of this stuff. I mean, just it
Well,
just
yeah, but the problem is there's no civility anymore
no.
and people don't know when to keep their mouths shut.
Mhm.
So they think everybody who can post something on social media is some sort of Walter Cronkite that everyone's going to listen to. There are literally hundreds of millions of people, including ourselves on social media, no one's ever heard of or cares. Like this lack of civility. And what's even more astonishing, because most of our audience is Canadian, but to our American viewers and listeners, most people never, like you're saying, never heard of Charlie Kirk in Canada. Yet some of the most
Got a big following.
hideous and appalling comments have come out of the mouths of people who glorify violence. Okay, and I think they are disgusting, and I'm not even going to talk about them because they're not worth my time. I mean, these
So,
people are scumbags, and they'll at least leave it at that. But the
well, I guess
problem,
too.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing that I find that's most telling about that is that it doesn't tell me who Charlie Kirk was. It tells me more about you as an individual, and that's where I'll leave that. As I
Yeah,
said pre-production, we have to remember that famous line from one of the Dirty Harry movies that about opinions. And I won't go into it there. If you want to find out, just Google that one.
yeah, no, and I just feel uh, saddened. I guess is the best. I'm not shocked anymore with the low level of civility and and a percentage of the
Yeah.
population, both
Yeah.
here and in the United States. It's what when I learned last week that United States is sunk to 31 in the list of countries educationally. and they were in American media themselves were saying that there are some states in the US where people graduate at grade 12, high school, can't read, can't write, can't add or subtract, but they've got a high school
Yeah.
diploma. And I'm thinking, well, there's your correlation because these are the same people that say all kinds of evil things because they know what the hell they're talking about. But if you look at their manifestation of this particular event on social media, there's only two things that come to mind. If you can see them, they're all white, literally wild-eyed folks, okay? And they can curse. They make sailors look like saints the way they carry on with their cursing and making up stuff and just vile. Anyway, let's not dwell on it because it's
No, I think the final point I'll make on that is that I noticed a real um, distinct difference between what happens when something bad happens to the left and something bad happens to the right. I have yet to see anything about any kind of rioting, looting, sit-ins. Um, Mostly what you've seen is people standing together, commiserating, crying on shoulders. Big difference on
well,
process.
we're not immune in Canada though to that because in the sense that on the weekend, I think in Toronto there was a group that was trying to hold a rally, pro-Canada rally in the face of all the things that this country's up against at the moment on so many levels. And who came out to try and break up this meeting were the same people that are the vile, contemptible bunch that you see on social media out of the States, and much smaller. Okay, I mean we're talking, scale wise, very different from what the folks that we're talking about in the U.S. came out to be so vile. And part of the difference is that this bunch in Canada that was at Christie Pitts or wherever this thing was in Toronto, a baseball diamond, where this meeting was being held. And you can look it up yourself on YouTube, and we won't go into big detail. But the difference in Canada and the US over this is copycat stuff, which is really silly. For one thing, the three tenets that they were talking about in the case of the Turning Point USA group is they had God, country, and religion, equally divided up, or family, sorry, God, country, family, religion. Okay, that this bunch in first of all in Canada, the God, country, religion, and family is not the same as it is in the US.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, Canada is not the United States in terms of those tenets. The big so-called patriotic thing running around with a flag day and night is very different in Canada. 4 years ago, if you ran around with a flag, you were a traitor over during the COVID thing. Now, all of a sudden, because someone's decided that that's going to be the reverse symbol because the elbows up crowd wants that. Sorry to say that, but we've gone 180 degrees on this. Okay, so in the space of 4 years, if you had a flag out, you were a settler, you were a colonialist, you're all this other stuff. And then
Or
when
worse, you may even been branded a redneck.
a redneck, right? Now all of a sudden that's okay. So that's not a
Yeah.
country. Canada, by comparison, is not a religious country in the same sense as the U.S. is, and certainly not proportionally, because we might have some belts of what they call the Bible Belt, but the U.S. it's built right into the Constitution. It's the God-given rights. There's nothing like that in our thinking, and basically, we're an agnostic atheist country for the most part. That's not to say there aren't people who are practice religion, but some of the things that are going on here, like the church burnings, which are very strange, and no one talks much about that. Or we have an alien religious theocracy moving into Canada by Islamists for the most part, with all these demonstrations. No one says anything about that in particular, certainly not the media. So
Hmm.
we don't approach religion the same way as the Americans do. And then family is entirely a different set of dynamics in Canada as
Yeah.
well compared to the US. So when we have these copycat, which I call copycat demonstrations, or even copycat, oh, he's a conservative. It's not the same thing in Canada. When we talk about conservative values, this doesn't mean that we're Republicans or that, we're MAGA supporters. We just don't like unethical, corrupt government, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
just to make light of it. But
Shock, shock.
well, that's right. So, when this ugliness came out in the Canadian media about the Charlie Kirk situation, I'm going, what are you doing? You're already pissing off the Americans at the official level because apparently our relationship with the U.S. is over, right from the Prime Minister's mouth himself. And now you're going to start making up silly stuff over this. Well, as I said in pre-production, if the Chinese have a saying, if the nail sticks out, that's what gets hammered. And you and I both know people are not sitting around at their kitchen tables in the U.S. worrying about what Canada thinks about anything.
Hmm.
We're not even they look at a map and there's a bunch of pink stuff north of of the United States and they kind of, yeah, it's okay. But if you start acting like a belligerent,
Idiot.
well, this is adversarial and becoming belligerent. And I don't understand, and we've said this many times. Why do we want to pick on somebody that's 10 times our size in so many things, 12 times our size in terms of the economy and whatever? What are we anyway? I
Enough
digress.
said. Yeah.
Enough said. So I don't. I'm not going to apologize for the morons in this country that have insulted our neighbors. But that's how, we're not cut from that cloth, you and I. These other
Yeah.
jokers, we don't care.
I think you've mentioned it before too, that it sounds like there's a great majority of Canadians that are that way, but it's a small percentage of a small population that have been, always will be, and will likely never change, being anti-American. And
Always
for what
were this.
reason?
Yeah, it's been a problem even when we were kids. There was a something about being angry that that they had better toys than we had or whatever. I don't. But I mean,
Yeah.
hell, we can't even play hockey anymore. Even that.
No.
When's the last time? They took over. Because the reason I bring that up is because our illustrious leader keeps using hockey analogies. Well, I'm going to tell him something. If you're going to use a hockey analogy, remember we haven't won a Stanley Cup in Canada for over 30 years. So sorry.
Yeah, we've had a couple of close close connections and close calls, but it just didn't
Yeah,
work out.
yeah. But as you know, just to move it, we're segueing. Parliament opened today.
Yes. Our own version of Mr. Dress Up, Mr. I don't know.
Well,
I've seen better discussions and better negotiations going on in kindergarten classes than what goes on in the House of Commons. So
well, I think I've said a couple of times that our politics is like a high school student council on so many levels. I mean, we've really all the serious people have been replaced by meme, pardon me, and not all of them, but you get so frustrated because here in today we see that this particular bunch has been in power 7 months, have promised a lot, okay,
delivered nothing.
delivered nothing. And now, I think you were telling me that in pre-production that the prime minister has said he's not going to cut the public service, he's going to let it dwindle down through attrition. This is nonsense. You can't pay these people. The every economist will tell you you have to cut the public service by at least 25%. You doubled it in 10 years.
Yeah.
And how are you going to get people to leave the public service if they haven't got a job to go to? So they're not going to be in a big hurry to leave and become. There's not enough people to retire to save any
Mhm.
significant amount of money to the taxpayer.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. The public service of Canada, and you and I both work for them, and I think we understand what it means when they tell you, "Hey, the party's over because we can't pay you," particularly back in the mid '90s. Um, we
yeah.
we
You can
have
come to work. You'll still have a desk, but you just won't be getting that
Yeah, you won't
paycheck.
be paid. So in a real tough time, you have to cut your expenses, like every human being who understands what they're capable of doing, financially or otherwise. This bunch here really needs to cut the size of government, and that
And
25% or 30% perhaps has to go.
but what did he
And
do though, Tom?
sorry.
What did he do? He's created a brand new bureaucracy to look at projects.
Yeah, a bureaucracy of one. This woman is going to get paid over $500,000 to do what? Decide if they can build a railway from, in Eastern Canada? Like, what are we talking about here?
I think we had a little bit of a glitch there.
Yeah,
It
it's
just kind
okay.
of,
Well,
oh, well,
well,
anyway,
well, well, it could be that if people are listening.
oh,
I
could
hope.
be. Or it
Yeah,
just
yeah.
says, it just said that something is, I don't know if it was the internet, the computer, or me was unstable. I forget, but
Well, you froze for a second there, but the sound was still
yeah.
running. So, you need to cut the size of government, which means cutting the number of cabinet people. You got 40 some cabinet, 38 or whatever. That's got to be cut in half. You don't need a country that has 35 million, take away the five that shouldn't even be here, doesn't need 40 ministries. Okay.
No.
You can't run it. And by the way, the same people that this head of this bunch keeps running off to 4 times since he's been elected. He's been over to Europe to talk to his pals in London and Paris and Berlin for
Mhm.
that matter. The latest from the UK, apart from scandal after scandal that is coming around the neck of Starmer, the prime minister there, is that they may be going to the IMF because they're broke. Can you imagine that? You know, why why are you going to try to emulate what the disaster of a government that the Starmer government is? You keep, and you can see that the same thinking is going on here. I mean, from my perspective, my opinion is that Starmer might have been a great, human rights lawyer or whatever. Then he went into politics, doesn't know diddly about politics. He's tone
Mhm.
deaf with his own people. He goes after the whatever woke stuff sells. He's now had to fire his ambassador to the US. We won't go into that, but you can look that up on the internet why that guy got fired. He's had to fire his deputy prime minister. This is just one thing after another. This guy is tone deaf about what the people in London are, I should say in England and Wales and in Scotland are going on about. They're done with this
Yeah.
nonsense. Okay, his own Labour government is turning on him. Okay, at the same thing in the case of a guy that was carpetbaggers brought in, Carney liberal carpetbaggers. Literally, no one ever heard of this guy, frankly, until 7 or 8 months ago when they made the big hullabaloo about getting rid of the other fellow that was in charge. Um, and he's the same way. He's tone deaf.
Yeah.
He talks and talks and makes up all kinds of, word salad speeches, but it means nothing. And he doesn't realize that people on the street have other problems. People at the kitchen table have other problems. People in the workplace, when they go there and they find out they're locked out because the company's gone belly up. He goes and talks about investments all the time. There's no investors coming to Canada. They're leaving Canada in droves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Skilled and educated people are leaving Canada, not because Stats Can's telling us this, but because the American State Department is saying how many Canadians, or rather, have applied for visas, permanent resident visas to the U.S., getting green cards. They're leaving. So again, he's
Yeah.
tone deaf. Sitting around and ignoring, for example, what's going on in Saskatchewan and Alberta in these town halls. You can't be any more tone deaf, but not understand that those are real frustrations there. And when I see the head of the PQ show up in Calgary and tell the people in Alberta, you're doing the right thing because we're going to do the same thing as soon as I get elected
Yeah.
as the premier of Quebec, I'm gonna call a referendum and get the heck out of Confederation. Well,
Well, I think part of that is arrogance on their part, or they, I think, just think that we're stupid, that they can do anything, and we're just going to believe what's going on and what's not going on, and we'll listen to some media broadcast that's already state-owned tell us that, well, just before Parliament opened, miraculously, the latest poll showed that the leader and the government had regained X number of points, that are most popular things, some sliced bread, and yeah,
look, I just it's fresh off the screen. Listen. This is Parliament is already going to be the show. It's a clown show. You know who's back? Elizabeth May is back, and her first speech in Parliament. Okay, back in the House of Commons, she has issues with securing the border. Okay. She wants to decrease border surveillance because it affects refugees. Okay. This is a kind of nonsense level of ridiculousness that we have. She talks about, Charlie Kirk is a tragedy, and the reason for political violence is because they have weak gun laws. Yes, this gun just ran up on the top of the building and shot this poor man. What are you talking about? This is the kind of stuff that we have to, put
well,
up
and
with.
I don't want to be unkind, but with three seats in the 300 and some odd that we have, uh, they should be just a non-entity. They should not even be talking. Nobody should be going and talking to them because they can't influence policy one way or the other anyway.
Look, Carney is already pushing the budget he promised in October now back to November, apparently. Okay, because
Well,
they're
you
playing
know as
games
well
with
as I
us.
do. He's gone and he's found out that Mother Hubbard's cupboard has more food in it than what he's got sitting in his treasury coffers, because he's too busy spending billions of dollars anywhere but here.
Well, look, food prices have gone up 40% since these jokers have been running around in power. Okay. And they're talking about housing. Someone pointed out to me that they want to put, I don't know how many millions of billions of dollars into housing. And when you divide the number of houses they want to build with the amount of money they want to spend, each house is going to cost over $1 million.
Yeah.
Who buys $1 million houses? What the heck
Well,
is wrong with these
that's
people?
that's kind of the norm out here, but you're lucky if you can find a house under $1 million here in the Lower Mainland. But
Look, a country that has a deficit from last year of almost 62 billion with a B dollars, you can't sustain this. This is not a sustainable formula. And if you keep doing the same thing we do and the same results and stop blaming the Americans. Okay. 10 years of mismanagement has nothing to do with
with
Donald Trump. Stop this. This boogeyman, this
well,
really has to end. And it's not a matter of defending the U.S. president or the Americans. This guy can screw up all on his own. Thank you very much with us without Canada's assistance. So this whole and we've talked about this before, so we're beating a dead horse. So I'm just going to pass on because it's so stupid. It's not worth our time, even for our weekly get together to talk up because it goes nowhere. It just
although I did, talking about the redundant Elizabeth May, we have to stop surveillance so we won't have interference with the refugees. I guess my question would be to her, do you watch what's going on in Europe? I mean, what was it? They had over 1 million people in the streets in London protesting government policies and the refugee stuff that's going on over there, where you've got elderly people and veterans who are homeless, but you've got people coming in boats getting, on the case here in Canada, it's $80,000 a year these people get. In Britain, they get homes and dental care and medical coverage, and the average John Q. Citizen over there gets the shaft. Eventually, it's going to happen here. I mean, we can't continue to take, like you said, 5 million people that we don't even know who are counted, but we don't know who they are, where they are, and we bring in, what was it, 845,000 temporary workers. Mm. When one, there might be jobs, but there probably isn't. Uh, there could be some infrastructure going on, but there isn't. There is,
There's no infrastructure going on. That's
well, that's what they say. So why are we bringing these people in? Why aren't we taking our own people and putting them out to get this infrastructure going? Why aren't we getting trade schools back online? When we're out shopping for immigrants, why aren't we looking for the skilled doctors, the skilled craftsmen, that I mean, things that we need?
because corruption and unethical behavior means that a corporation will take money out of your pockets, that is the taxpayers, and give unskilled people from abroad an opportunity to work at a donut shop at subsidized rates out of the taxpayer's pocket. You
Mhm.
know? Okay, so look, the obvious is there, and they don't care. This is the problem. We can
Well, I
talk
think it goes
about.
back to what I said before. I think they think we're stupid, and we're not seeing this.
Well,
Not
they may be right. A large swath of the population is not necessarily stupid, just doesn't care.
well,
And
not care, or like you've mentioned before, they got the attention span of a goldfish, which is what we've recorded now, about 7 seconds. But
yeah, exactly. And when you look at some of the stuff, for example, they talk about we're going to do all this infrastructure stuff. You just brought it up a minute ago. They talked about infrastructure, then they gave the Chinese money to build the bloody ferries that are going to be plowing the between Vancouver Island and Vancouver. These ferries aren't even made with Canadian steel. They keep talking about they're going to sell. No. And they talked a big storm about how they're going to do this. Your own premier sold out basically to the Chinese.
mhm.
Okay, this is nobody believes any of these nonsense that these guys formulate, because why would you? Why the hell would you listen to anything out of Ottawa about big plan? First of all, there is no investment. The investment is they take higher taxes, like your gas already going up. I think you told me it's $1.80 now in
Yeah, we're a
Vancouver.
buck 80,
Yeah,
a
okay.
liter.
So that's the investment. They tax us into poverty, and they take that money and they dress it up as an investment. There's no investment. The communists did investments like that. They built 9,000 tractors when there was only 2,000 for that anyone wanted to buy. And that's what these guys are doing again. It's like, they're going to ask someone in Calgary that they put in to tell me about building a railway between Toronto and Quebec City in 4 years from now, before they put a shovel in the ground. Like what Potemkin village are we building here? You know?
Well, it's just a sad state of affairs. We have ace geniuses that are still pushing a mandate on electric cars when we don't have the infrastructure to support that. Um, we've got the ace geniuses that are taxing us on our fossil fuel usage, but the electric cars that are using the same roads that are being paid for by the people that are using the gasoline fossil fuels, that these guys aren't. Like, I mean, it's where are they going to get the money when here in BC they wanted us by 2030 to be 100% electric? The roads are going to fall apart because there's no money being collected from the gas tax to do this. Our transit system is going to go downhill because I think it's 25% of the tax on gas goes to do that. So I, I don't know. It's
Well, we've talked about this impending problem with keeping Confederation stitched together. Because if you have this intransigence out of Ottawa with the West, I don't even live in the West, you do, but even I can't fathom why you aren't actually paying attention to what's happening there. You focus your attention on stuff that really is peripheral to the real essence of what is wrong with this country. When I hear this guy from Quebec who's likely to win the premiership because Legault was dead last in the ratings, and Quebec is looking at a decline of $13 billion a year if Alberta pulls the pin. And he says, you know what? I don't care. We know we're aware of where that 13 billion goes to. And he basically said stuff out loud that the 13 billion that Alberta supposedly sends via Ottawa to Quebec actually doesn't go to Quebec. A lot of it gets through various fingers and plans and programs. And he's, basically he was saying that the Quebec liberal establishment politically, broadly speaking, skims off a large portion of that money into hobby projects, into unethical, illegal. This guy pointing out that if Alberta goes and that money goes, no problem, because they don't see most of it anyway. And I'm thinking, whoa, now this might be political rhetoric, but
I'm sure a lot of it is, but
and he says, why should we be beholden to Alberta? Okay. So if you're going to stay tone deaf in Ottawa and you don't hear what's coming out of the mouth of this guy who's likely to be a serious political adversary to the federal system in this country next year, and you're not paying attention to the groundswell of opinion and feelings of rejection and disinterest, which has been going on for decades, but now it's starting to percolate. And all you have to do is go on the internet. Forget listening to CTV News or CBC, gaslighting us about stuff that no one asked them to. The truth of the matter is they're not paying attention. And if Alberta and Saskatchewan slip out of Confederation simply because you're not listening to their problems, you got a strike of the teachers and the strike of the healthcare workers in Alberta. And the provincial government says, listen, we can't pay you because we're sending all our money to Ottawa. If some of that stayed behind, we can give you raises. We can build some hospitals. We can improve the schools, blah, 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 blah. All, now some of this is politics, no question, but it makes sense. If you're going to be, if your resources are being sucked out of your pockets, both figuratively and actually, uh, you know, you cannot help but say to the people in Ottawa, you're not listening, you're not paying attention to what's going on.
well, it's the same here in BC. And we've got huge number of public service workers that are out and the government here is saying we can't give you a raise other than what we're talking about. 1%, I think, adds $1 billion to our building debt. 2% is $2 billion. And this is from a government that came in with an $800 million surplus that are now running about a $9 billion deficit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I have no confidence really in what's going to happen over the next weeks and months in Parliament because it's just going to be it's going to be theatrics.
well, it's going to be
Uh,
grandstanding. Yeah.
Grandstanding, the real issues will be brought up and it'll be gaslighting and then when already it opens today and he's already talking about the prime minister that we're going to go to November for a budget. There is no budget. They're going to come up with whatever they can to obfuscate on when the bottom falls out. Listen, that time is short. When you
Mhm.
when you can't pay your mortgage, this is a country that can't pay its mortgage. You know, and we're getting there. And you've got people cutting your grass. You should be cutting your own grass, but you're paying people to do that. That's the public service. You're sending money to a charity overseas to various places that don't care whether you send. They don't. We have no friends overseas because we sent them all kinds of aid money. Do you think they're
No.
gonna? You think people in these various countries that people can't even find on the map that we're spending sending millions of dollars to, do you think they sit around and go, oh, thank you, Canada. If you have a problem, we'll come over and help you with your problem. Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
On top of which, who are our friends anymore? We're managing to piss off so many people around the world who
Well,
are
the last
allies.
decade. Yeah. The last decade.
So I'm not very confident. I know people probably think there were two Cassandras going on every week on this, but it's just it starts to pile up after a while, and
Yeah.
we need to have some clarity, and we're not going to get it from this bunch. It's just, and I'm
No,
sorry,
no, no.
I have little faith, frankly, in the conservatives making any inroads through Parliament. This isn't going to work. This will naturally come. It will collapse on, and then we have to rebuild it. Now, how we do that later, I don't know. But you cannot fix what the people in the system don't want fixed or have wrecked anyway. I mean, I think the mission was to wreck it in the first place. I
It does kind of does sounds that way, doesn't it? Like with the old movie, The Manchurian Candidate.
yes,
And we've got a guy there who's kind of an unknown, who's floated above a lot of stuff that seems to be poking and prodding and loosening the boulders of the dam. It just maybe history will look back and say, gee, those guys in the Border Patrol Journal, they were sure like Nostradamus.
well, I'm speechless. But well, look, if you do the same thing over and let's just stick with this one. If we do the same thing over and over again and think we're going to get a different result, I guess we're pretty clever because we're not going to get a different result. And that's just the easiest way to define where we're going here, as a country. We do the same thing over and over and over again, and the result is the same over and over again. Okay, we need to have some serious rethink of a lot of our structural and political and economic models here because
Yeah,
the one we've been running for over 10 years is clearly a destructive one. And I'm convinced that the cleanup picture here is Carney after Trudeau went 8 innings and kind of ran out of steam with his destructive management.
yeah,
And in comes this guy who's, these no one's ever heard of this guy. He just suddenly shows up. He looks like a real, good southpaw who's going up against right-handed hitters. And now we're going to fix this. And he's doing the cleanup pitching.
maybe.
Um, that I'll use the baseball metaphor, whereas the liberals like to use the hockey one. But and in the end, again, who are our pals who come to our rescue in all this system? I don't know.
And the reality is we've ruined the relationship with the United States. Well, not we, certain sections have done that. But the reality is, as we move down to the last minute here, that's where our trade goes. It
Yep,
is a north-south, it's
yep.
the easiest way to get things. We can't afford, we've not got the infrastructure to take anything east-west anymore. So
And there's no effort apparently to do it either.
no.
All right. Well, look, we
Anyway,
gotta we
that
gotta
kind of
tell
wraps up
people.
this week.
Yeah, hit the like button,
Mhm. Buy us a cup.
subscribe, buy us a coffee.
Yeah,
Stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy. We'll see you next week.
you betcha.